Finoa Custody, thank you for being here. Take it away.
Thanks a lot. In the last couple of days, as well as in the last talks today in the afternoon, we heard a lot about institutions, institutional use cases. Since we saw talks about stablecoins, and also Mac yesterday was talking about how to bring enterprises into the Cosmos ecosystem. And I want to talk now about which infrastructure is required to build this bridge for the institutions to join the Cosmos ecosystem. And historically, Cosmos has been very strong in building a community and building traction for especially like retail or very crypto-native users. And yeah, the talk is about the next step and the bridge to the institutional future of Cosmos. And why I'm here to talk about this, quick background. I'm Daniel, Managing Director of Finoa Consensus Services. We are the staking arm of Finoa, a regulated custody provider out of Germany. And we have been historically supporting basically all big Cosmos-based launches over the last couple of years with custody and staking services to enable foundations to keep their treasury safe, as well as institutions to engage and receive their funds as well. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here and share our observations about the next steps. But before talking about institutions specifically, let's have a look at the ecosystem players that are required to build a successful blockchain ecosystem. So on the one hand side, you have the foundations as kind of the architects, the founders that have an innovative idea, a dream that they want to bring to life. Then you have the investors, the capital, the funding. They're the ones who are basically enabling the founders to bring that system to life, not only with capital, but also with expertise, advising, and so on. And then the last group are the actual users, right? They're the ones who are using the new system. They're building innovative apps on top. They're building communities. They're the ones that are filling this system with life. And that's in the end the purpose of a blockchain, to get used, or basically from any system. And each system needs all of those participants to come together to build an ecosystem that works in the long run. But to support all of those activities from those different actors, we need to have an underlying infrastructure. We need validators to run the chain. We need wallets to enable users to actually engage and interact with the system that different players have been built. We need custodians to safeguard assets. We need exchanges to enable new joiners to get there. And those players have very different requirements, for example, in terms of custody, like self-custody to regulated custody. And what we're also seeing is that the networks are specializing across the spectrum. So we have like very, let's say, crypto-native blockchains, or very crypto-native focused blockchains, ecosystems like the Cosmos ecosystem. And on the other extreme, we have like new networks like Canton that are very specialized on bringing institutions on chain. And of course, we're having also some networks that are trying to balance this. And over the last couple of days and talks, we saw and heard about the ambition of Cosmos to move more and more into this balanced approach. And I think that's the right way to go for the ecosystem. Why that's the case? I mean, we see that the institutions are here. We don't need to go into the details of those numbers, but the overall message is that institutions are investing heavily. We're seeing the funding with from the VCs. We're seeing that they are using the system. So stablecoin payments are huge these days. So institutions are here. So it's worth to look into how we can support them with infrastructure to actually get more and more involved into the system. So again, we have the different ecosystem players, and all of them have basic needs, right? All of them need to have a solution to receive their funds, to store their funds. That's kind of the most basic stuff, right? Be it like self-custody or regulated custody, you need to custody and get access to your funds that you invested in. Once you invested, most of the players want to go ahead and bring their assets to work, right? They want to stake their assets, which is kind of the next thing to iterate for those players. That's why we have so many validator companies also on this conference, because staking your funds is kind of a basic need for every player into the ecosystem. Then the next step is to interact with your assets and interact with different applications. Those are wallet integrations and so on. I will dive deeper into this into the next slides. On top of the, let's say, basic requirements that everybody has, foundations, institutions, as well as enterprises have like more requirements to the technical infrastructure. They are not an individual, they are an organization. So they need to have an operational setup to manage their treasury. They need to have like access management, they need reporting, they have special security requirements, they maybe need a simpler UI so that every employee of a company can understand what's actually going on. And of course, they need regulatory clarity, which is key to understand to support the different institutions, banks, VCs, as well as enterprises to actually go and use the technology. And on the extreme, we have like the big enterprises, the big banks that want to have integrations into their current system. They are not changing their system to adapt to the new stuff. They want to have direct interactions and direct integrations with the system, and that's why also we heard yesterday from Mac that they are going out to the enterprises to talk about how to bring the technical implementations directly to the enterprises and to the institutions. So what do we see missing at the moment? I think the main gap that we see at the moment is that institutions and enterprises are investing, they're staking, but they don't have a valid way to actually interact with the stuff that they invested in. That's a challenge for investors because they are lagging the technical limitations of like regulated custody providers, for example, to actually get there, as well as for like enterprises to have like regulatory as well as a technical environment to actually deploy stuff in a fashion that they can actually use. So both of them are mainly using the tech at the moment for treasury management, instead of actually using the tech in the way that it's supposed to work and help the systems. So the main gap is the secure interaction directly out of a regulated custody provider. For example, to use DEXs to get access to stablecoin yields, tokenized RWAs, you name it, whatever the use case is. At the moment, that's mainly stablecoins as well as other DeFi applications. And that's what we want to solve. We want to fill that gap. But first, let me give a quick rundown of what we have done so far, and then how we can fill that gap or aiming to fill this gap. We talked about the basic needs. And the basic need for every institution is to store and receive their funds. So that's also why we started around 2019 with the regulated custody service for foundations and institutions to enable them to participate on-chain and supported various Cosmos-based chains over the last couple of years, as well as other networks outside of the Cosmos ecosystem to support institutions to receive and invest into the different networks, as well as foundations to manage their treasury accordingly. The other next kind of basic need was the topic of staking. So around 4 years ago, we started our own staking arm to support foundations with professional infrastructure to decentralize their environments, as well as the institutions and investors to participate in on-chain inflation, get part of their rewards. And as of today, we have around 2 billion assets under delegation of our validators across the different networks. That was kind of, if we're looking at this triangle, kind of the right side, those are the services for the foundations as well as the capital directly. The other part of this triangle is kind of the foundation and user stuff. And what we launched a couple of weeks ago is our own so-called stake desk. It's a UI there. Everybody with a self-custody wallet can directly connect and see insights about their staking allocations. It's a very easy way to get engaged into staking, as well as for the institutions, for the foundations, a great way to advertise for new joiners of the ecosystem to get their hands dirty and start staking. And our next goal is now for next year to fill this gap that we identified in the last slide to make institutions and enterprises users of those networks. So to enable institutions and enterprises to use the networks, we want to start with the most interesting use cases for them as of today. So those are stablecoin yields, liquid staking, and tokenized RWAs. More to come in the future, but that's where we see the most of the demand at the moment. The system that we've built as an ecosystem, we built this to be being used and not just to be invested in and then forgot about. So that's why we are scouting at the moment for apps, projects, chains that are supporting those use cases and are then integrating them directly into our custody UI so that institutions can directly use them out of our regulated custody. So if you are building an app or launching a project in any of those ideas, I'm very happy to connect. We're one of the leading custodians and staking providers, and we have the opportunity to bring the institutions on-chain together. And that's our way to build the institutional bridge, and I'm very happy to be here and discuss how we can do this together. Thanks a lot.